So good evening, good morning, everyone. Onegaishimasu. I hope everyone's doing very well today. I'm going to begin by reading you number 14 from the Shukshu book, Fudoshin. True Fudoshin is not an unmoving mind, but the condition that becomes infinitely close to the still state, but is never still. In other words, a calm state arises from infinite movement. By absorbing all things into this movement, that becomes infinitely smaller and smaller, we can experience Fudoshin. This state does not fluctuate even if 10,000 mountains collapse around us. Oh, when we are performing the service of Otomo for a sensei, one of the things we have to do most often is drive the sensei around in a car. And when we're driving the sensei around in the car, one of the most difficult tasks we have to perform is starting and stopping. If you haven't done this, listen, I'll tell you about it. If you have done this, you'll know, I think, exactly what I'm talking about. In Aikido, we have the phrase Seishi and Teishi, two different phrases. Seishi means living calmness, and Teishi, we say, means dead calmness. The word Teishi actually translates just as stop. Stop means Teishi. But Toi Sensei likes us to say dead calmness. So when it's time to stop the car, come to a stop, the very, very last thing we do is stop. In fact, if we're really good at this, no stop ever occurs. What happens is for 99 and 9/10% of the time, 0.9999, we are preparing to stop. So we prepare, half. And suddenly the sensei notices that the car has come to a halt. It has ceased movement, forward movement. But there is no sensation of a stop. That's driving with Seishi. And then when you begin again to move, the sensei should just suddenly notice that the car is moving forward. He should notice you leaving the mark. He shouldn't notice you starting. So actually, we use Seishi in everything we do in Aikido. That's how we do techniques. It's how we cut bokken. It's how we swing the jo. It's how we perform kyatsu. Oh, it's how we do oneness rhythm taisu, aiku taiso, hitori waza. Everything we do in Aikido, we do with Seishi. That means with living relaxation. So how do we learn to do living relaxation instead of dead relaxation? We do this by practicing ki breathing, ki no kokyu ho. You can practice it tonight, but just before we start, I'll give you a little hint. So when you're beginning to breathe out, even you yourself should not notice the moment you begin breathing out. This is allowing the breath to begin to be released. And you certainly have an intention to do that. You know that's going to happen, but you don't actually make it happen. It happens without you making it happen. And exactly in the same way, when you hear Sokoboku again, and you begin to breathe in, you begin breathing in without beginning. You must not be able to tell even yourself when you begin breathing in. So that's how gentle this has to be, and with what tremendous awareness we practice ki breathing. So as we're practicing ki breathing, we're practicing what Suzuki Sensei calls breath control. But breath control doesn't mean like controlling the breath. Maybe people think it means I'm going to get to someday I'll be able to do something special with my breath, and that will allow me to do Shomanuchi Kokinage in some glorious way. No, there's nothing that way. You are changing your subconscious mind. Believe it or not, your subconscious mind not only runs your mind, it runs your body too. And it certainly dictates the nature of your body movement. And what Suzuki said, you need breath control to do ki movement. And all movement must be ki movement. He means by that, all movement must be seishi. So it begins from infinity and it ceases in infinity. Never begins and never ends, but the feeling is there's somewhere that it began and somewhere that it finished. And if you're taking uke, you may feel very strongly like there was a beginning and end, even though you can't find it anywhere. Well, this is I'm not trying to be mysterious here, by the way, in any way. This is very practical, extremely practical. It just takes a lot of practice and a lot of attention, but it changes the entire nature of the way you move in Aikido. And maybe in other things too, but you only use it when you need to. It's not like it's necessary all the time, but it's definitely necessary quite often in daily life, and certainly is necessary in driving. Either your sensei or your mother-in-law, I always say, is equally important to drive well. Okay, so let's practice some ki breathing. And we can all have our experience of celebrating seishi. Well, maybe you noticed that even though it's easier to practice seishi and ki breathing, we can practice it in ki meditation and whole body meditation also. That's because we can practice it in everything, because everything is that way. Think about nature. All of nature is based on seishi. All movement, whether it's time or space, the seasons. When does the spring begin? Can you identify the instant that spring begins? Of course not. When does it change to summer? There's no way. We give a date, we give a time, and but for you and I, we just notice one day that it's warmer. we notice one day that it feels like summer, and so forth with the other seasons. When we say, by the way, dear, it started raining, well, it's because we notice it's raining, just like we notice the car is moving, or we notice the car is stopped, if there's seishi. So there's seishi because we can't look that closely. And in fact, we can, perhaps, but even if we can, no matter how closely we look, it never becomes zero. That's what Toysitsu is teaching. See, human beings are the only ones in the universe that have teishi, dead relaxation, that stumble from one thing to another. We knock everything into time segments. We make every map into segments, and then we identify ourselves with owning parts of them and making them, this is mine, this is my time, this is my space. And so this is all teishi, all putting boundaries around something and limiting it can be teishi. But it doesn't mean there's something wrong with a boundary, as long as you remember that it's really intimate. That there's no such thing as, there might be there might be inside your house and outside your house, and you'd rather I stay outside your house, So that we know what that means, but I don't know if you've ever been in some cities, the state line goes right down the middle of the city. Some people live in one city, some people live in another, state in another state, like in Kansas City, where I go to teach in Lawrence. When you go into Kansas City, there's Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. And I can't figure out when we're in one or the other. They always know, okay? Because it's seishi. So this is fascinating to me. It is endlessly, I was gonna say challenging. It's not a problem, but it's an endless invitation to query, to question, to look into, to discover what we haven't noticed about something because we've judged it to be fixed, or we've judged it to be a given, an obvious given, and sometimes even defended as such. But if we look closely, maybe we can see something about it different by practicing seishi. Okay, so would you please like to say something about this, ask a question or make a comment? What is your experience of this seishi? How about Fincher Sterling?
Hello, Sensei.
Hello, Fincher.
And everyone else. Seishi, I'm sort of a cloud watcher, and your descriptions really remind me of, watching the sky, and you never know when or where or how one's going to develop, and when or where or how one's going to dissipate. But there they are. So I remember that as I am meditating anyway. And during my day, it's a little bit, I guess I'm more preoccupied with, work and everything that goes on in the day to really, as of this point, look for it, but I do look for it, as you mentioned, in driving quite a bit, coming up to a stop sign, and because it's sort of fun. but, but that's the feeling that I get, is the way you describe it, when you're in a car and you're coming to a stop and all of a sudden you're not moving anymore. You can't quite tell when it happened. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've driven me before. I've driven with you driving before. You're very, very, very adept. I think probably the best Seishi driver I ever was with was Clayton Nalawai Sensei. I think he probably doesn't drive anymore because of his age. But he had this gigantic old Cadillac. And old meaning, yeah, it's pretty old. I think it's like 97 or 98. I'm not sure. Maybe Carlos knows. But it floats, kind of like a boat. In fact, I think they call them boats sometimes. But when you're driving with Nalawai Sensei, you are never, ever aware of movement. He's so smooth. Of course, he's virtually creeping through town. He's not challenging anyone. He lets everybody go wherever they want to go. He's very, very aware of everyone there. And the car is just moving. And it's just like I explained, you mentioned, you suddenly find yourself and movement has ceased. And then suddenly you see that you're moving again. Part of it's being with Nalawai Sensei because he's a very engaging and compelling person to be with. It doesn't happen often, or didn't happen often, that I got to drive with him. But whenever I would go to teach a seminar, usually I have well, Carlos usually drives me. He's also a very good driver that way. But one time he couldn't, on certain occasions, he couldn't, so Nalawai had picked me up. It was some years ago. Doesn't drive much, I don't think, anymore. But those who practice this and see the value of it, and really the fun of it, the feeling of it, because I can get quite good at it, but the feeling is the same feeling you have when you are sitting in meditation and you're deeply calm. So this is really why I wanted to read Fudoshin tonight, because the Toei Sensei's description is so beautiful that about true calmness it's a matter of perceiving in your body infinite motion. So see, the key to Seishi is that it actually never stops. The universe never ceases. Universal movement goes on infinitely and is infinitely rapid, so infinitely rapid that, as Toei Sensei says, it's imperceptible. But as you become more and more calm, you can feel that there's a great intensity in it. Recently, I suggested to you that if you go out and sit on a really quiet day, maybe if you're watching the clouds, or if looking at the ocean, or looking at a still lake in the mountains, when everything is really still and there's not even a breeze. When it's like that, you can experience great intensity, even though absolutely nothing seems to be moving. So the same thing can happen, of course, sitting still anywhere. You don't require other things to be still for you to experience this. But in the beginning, that's a good way. Someone else, please. Joni Jackson. Can you join us?
Hi, Sensei.
Hello.
Well, when I listen, to me, it's just describing being alive. As I listen, it's just I feel the sensation in my body is the tingling, and well, it's all satiety. I'm not actively, but I'm very aware of movement. Just and tonight during the breathing, it was because you said all that before it. I was really looking at the physical. I didn't. It was almost like there was no breath. I changed directions intentionally, but that's all that I can't even really describe. Just movement changed. The direction of movement changed, but the breath was almost imperceptible. I mean, I couldn't really even detect it, which I wouldn't say is normal, but usually I'm not looking at it in that way. But anyway, I think I told you this once a while ago. You can see just movement moving the air, I guess, maybe. I remember once I was driving on the road home from Hana, and I came, and there was a car in front, and so I stopped the car, but nothing else stopped. I was so aware of everything else still moving. And it was like very disconcerting because it was so intense. I realized, things really are always moving. In a car, it's an interesting sensation, but so I guess sensation, yeah, everything is always moving, and the calmer, the more you notice.
Well, even the physical universe, I mean, is always moving. We know that the atoms and subatomic particles zipping around light speed.
Yeah.
And in the macrocosm, the planets are moving at incredible speeds that we can't even imagine. Well, we don't notice them. We don't measure them ourselves. I think astrophysicists can measure them, but they're incredible speed. Everything is moving at great speed. And at the same time, the universe is expanding at incredible speed, coming apart, making more space all the time. So everything is always moving and changing. Evolution is done through, just like all change, seishi. So we just suddenly notice that this change has happened. Someone was asking me the other night about subconscious mind. When we're talking about changing our subconscious mind, it's not like you change it. It changes through your noticing by keeping one point and paying attention. Then, so one day you just go, oh, look, I do that differently now. Oh, look, I don't do that anymore. Oh, I never noticed. I never stopped doing that. It just doesn't happen anymore. That's seishi. That's the way all things actually happen. But in our minds as humans, we try to make things happen. So that's teishi, making things happen. That's moving out of time or off time. And that's when all difficulties start happening. All accidents, all violence, all difficulties, all negativity. All of these things are people screwing around with the natural seishi-like movement of the universe. Okay, well, I think I'll finish on that note. Please excuse my French. So nice to see you all again. Thank you. Friday will be, just a moment before I go, Friday, I want to remind you, I'll send you a note about this, but Friday we're going to do the breakout session for the first time. Friday, I think, will be the 5 principles of Setsudo. But the exciting thing about Friday is we're going to get to experience the breakout session. So we'll see how that goes. Be prepared for it. I'll send you any notes I think that you need. All right? Domo arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you very much.